This week's Parsha, Parshas Beshalach, is an interesting Parsha because we really think that the entire story of the Exodus is done when it comes to last week's Parsha, Parshas Bay. We have all the Makos wrapped up in a nice little box, and all we have to do in this Parsha is leave. This Parsha should have ended with the Jews just walking out of Egypt and going to Har Sinai, with a couple of stops along the way. But instead, we have this big, long section in there with trying to leave Egypt. They've already been told to leave Egypt, right? The royal edict comes down from Pharaoh. Get out. Right? So we said, let us go. And they said, not only is he going to let you go, he's going to tell you to leave. And then all of a sudden, he has remorse on letting everybody go. Right? So what is the deal with having such a large engagement? Why not just stop Mitzrayim where they are? Why go through the whole experience of Kriras Yamsuf and the walking through with the water split on both sides? What was the problem? The Midrash of Chazal, the Midrash Chazal here in Midrash Rabbah identify that there is specifically one thing left. There's one thing left. And these Midrashim are brought down in a few different places. They're in three different parakim in Midrash Rabbah. They are in chapters 21, 22, and 23. And they're kind of spread out. One is, anyway, if you want to look at those parakim to see these Midrashim, by all means. I'm not going to go through them now. But if you want to see some of the source material, you can take a look over there. And the Midrashim are clearly talking about one more thing that's kind of missing in the Jewish people. We've Makas Cheshech clears out the non-believers, the rest of the non-believers. But there's something missing in Klal Yisrael. What are they missing that they haven't demonstrated yet, right? The last thing that they're missing is a clear test and a testimony to their belief that Hashem is the one in charge. We have clearly seen that the Jewish people are very well committed to this Exodus at this point. And it's only Pharaoh who needed to believe that Hashem was the one true God. The next biggest problem that they have is that they didn't really feel committed to Hashem based on there being an Exodus. There's an interesting little story that the Midrash brings down. This Midrash is the one that's in chapter 22, and it's Midrash number 11. And it brings a little parable. It says how there's, two people traveling on a highway. And it once used to be very common, and especially when these Midrashim were written in between the basically the 1st and 9th centuries, that you would encounter highway robbers. So traveling was very dangerous. That's why we also say Tfilas Derech, when you go on a journey in between two cities. It's a dangerous thing. Not like now, where the biggest danger is either being pulled over by a police officer or having something go wrong with your vehicle, or chas v'shalom getting into a motor vehicle accident. Highway robbers, okay, well, I shouldn't say that. I've seen some stuff where people try to cut you off and then try to commit insurance fraud. Insurance fraud is not the highway robbers. Highway robbers function in the following way, according to Chazal. If you stop even for a second, they're going to come after you. They like an easy target. So if you're pulling off the side and you want to rest, you have to fix the stuff on your pack animal, or your caravan needs to pull over, they will come to try to rob you. This form of piracy was rampant. So the parable in the Midrash is that there's a young woman who's traveling with her entourage that's not capable of fighting off these highway robbers. So she calls out for help. And this other wealthy individual, a very king-like person or prince-like person, has an entourage that can save her from these pirates, right? These highway bandits. So she's saved from the highway bandits, the pirates, whatever you want to call them. And this guy thinks, you know what? I should see if maybe there's a connection there, right? Maybe, she's looking for somebody. I can provide her protection. I can provide her all these things. It's not safe. Let me see if maybe we could bring the two kingdoms together, right? Not uncommon to kind of arrange a marriage like that centuries ago. And so he sends a letter her way, and she kind of ignores it, which, okay, it's a right. So the Midrash says, so he basically releases the bandits, and she calls the same person for help. I said, oh, you see, you're only going to call me when you need me? Is that the idea? And the Midrash kind of leaves off with that idea, but that is the reason why the entire experience of Kriyas Yamsuf had to happen. The Jewish people, as we see from the very beginning of Parshas Shmos, knew how to call out to Hashem, and they recognized Hashem as the one who was going to save them. So those things were okay, right? And that their cries reach up to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But the one thing that's missing, as he tells Moshe Rabbeinu in the following parsha, okay, he tells him Boel Parai, right? He says, "I'm the name Shmi Hashem Lo Hodati." People don't understand what it means to be an eternal God. They don't understand what that means to be there, to always be there. And the thing is that in establishing this relationship, the Midrash is making it very clear that God can't be there only as a result of needing help. There is going to be much more expected than just showing up and being there when there's trouble. And if that's not understood and appreciated, then it's not going to work out. So Kriyas Yamsuf has to tier this belief system with a couple of things. That the Jewish people have to realize that Hashem's eternity is tied directly to the Jewish people's destiny. And that their destiny is tied directly to their ability to recognize Hashem's supremacy. So it works in both ways. You have a difficult time traveling through this world without protection. Hashem will provide you protection. If you feel you only need me at the time of troubles, then I will demonstrate to you that you can have troubles, but then you have to recognize that I will come to save you. And this pattern does repeat. But the difference is here at the Yam Suf specifically, right as they're about to experience the Kriyas Hayam, the actual splitting of it, when you have a wall to one side and a wall to the other side, and they're walking on dry land. It's a very specific nace that they're experiencing. And the Midrash continues on with this idea that there is a similar parallel to the Song of Songs. The Song of Songs talks about how the Jewish people are like, or at least the Song of Songs is used in Midrash as an allegory for some of the experiences of the Jewish people. And so in one such allegory, the beloved one in the Song of Songs is referred to as Yonasi Bechageve Hasela, as like my small dove that goes into the smallest cracks of the rock. It's in the second chapter of Shir HaShirim. And if you look there, between lines 7 to 14, there's a number of descriptions over there describing the beloved. And Chazal often refer to that case. So this situation of Kriyas Yamsuf is one in which the Jewish people are compared to a dove that is hiding in the cracks or the crevices of the rock, just large enough to get in, but potentially leaving some issues on either side. And as we see over here, that as they are fleeing, they need to hide in this narrow space. They already had protection. They had the Amud Eish Balayla and the Amud Anan Yomam, right? So, and it not only provided them practical things, right? Like the Ha'ir Lehem HaSaderech, the Amud Eish was there to light up the night, right? And we see that the Amud Anan was between them and the Egyptians themselves and Parai. So the Jewish people felt in many ways like an animal fleeing from a great terror. So that mashal is then applied, that analogy is applied to the Jewish people in this case to talk about that the special relationship is that Hashem is able to provide them a sense of security. Much like the beloved in Shir HaShirim, the idea is that between them, one is not sure about how they want to move forward, but the other one is saying in one of their statements, I'm providing a sense of security. So we see this idea is reiterated a couple of times in the Midrashim, that Hashem's eternity is to provide security forever for the Jewish people. And what's interesting is if you compare this to, for example, the tefillah of Rabbi Eliezer, it's brought down in Brachos in Perek Tfilas Shachar, that he said Rabbi Eliezer is close to dying. And I asked him what he thinks about long life. How does one approach that? He says, there's a difference between the mortal and the immortal. The mortal, they make some rules. There's no way for them to make sure they're going to be followed when they're gone. They make some enactments. There's no way for them to check out to see if those things have stayed around. But the Holy One, blessed be He, is eternal. He's always there to come back and check to see if those things are going to continue. He said, and that's why he said that he himself didn't try to make a big deal out of anything, because what's he going to do when he's not here? Why make a big deal out of it? He says, when I'm not here, I can't enforce it. Only the Holy One, blessed be He, can be there at all times. And in that way, we can appreciate the experience of Kriyas Yamsuf. It was meant to give the Jewish people an opportunity to evaluate how important this eternity of Hashem was. Not only is He the master of all forces, not only is He capable of doing tremendous things, not only is He able to fulfill His promise to Abraham, that God is able to do this eternally. He's always able to be there, but you have to be committed to Him. So the relationship works both ways. It's not perfunctory. It's not service-based. It's not something that is only coming as a result of need. There has to be a commitment, and that commitment means to basically, as they had Sinai, is to sort of finish off that agreement. But in terms of the placing of this story here in Egypt, they have to have a final experience of Hashem's eternity. And that sense of eternity is the ability to deliver on protecting the Jewish people at any time of need. And this also fulfills the promise to Abraham, which is that when it says Ger Yezarecha, right, that you will have children who will be sojourners. So the only way for them to pull themselves out of it, and this is the third midrash in here, is for them to declare Zeh Keli, right? They declare in Shir Al-Hayam, Zeh Keli v'yanbehu Elokei Avi v'avomenu. Right? This is my God, and this is the God of my ancestors. And recognizing that they were a part of an entire process. There was an entire process that has to go on. The Jewish people are a part of that. And that part of it is by recognizing that Hashem is the one who will save them, solidifies the idea that all of the other powers to which the Egyptians subscribe godlike authority are useless. And when you solidify the eternity of Hashem and His ability to deliver and to receive, you basically eliminate those pantheonic religions. You say to them, your gods and those things to which you ascribe power have no influence. And I've spoken about this here actually quite a few times, going all the way back to Yosef. Yosef HaTzadik, his big issue with Pharaoh is Pharaoh doesn't really understand how things can operate outside of his control. It's very frustrating for him to see things operating outside of his control. And this Pharaoh also had the same problem. And even though this Pharaoh doesn't know Yosef, the idea is still the same, that they don't recognize that this world has a very controlled and deliberate vector of history, and it's not just left up to the willy-nilly feelings of capricious gods. And that's not how these things work. And Pharaoh, by declaring himself a god, believed that he could influence everything. And it's unfortunate for him. I actually made a joke this week, and I'll conclude with this thought. There's an acronym that people are using sometimes when they don't feel that their leader is doing what he says he will do. They call it TACO. Trump always chickens out. Right? So in many ways, this is a big problem for the Pharaoh. His name was he was Raamses II. He had in the same time period which this is going on, there were invasions of sea peoples. He had a campaign against the Hittites, which ended in a stalemate, and they signed a very long agreement. Very cool stuff. If you don't know what I'm talking about, just look up Raamses II and the Hittites and their agreement. He pretends like he won. He outstretches his arm against the Hittites. He thinks he's a great guy. But you can apply the same logic to him. He's Rocco, which is Raamses always chickens out. Raamses always loses it. He always loses control of his entire situation, and he never gets done what he says he's going to do. And in that way, that can be the critique against him, is he thinks he's in control of the situation. When the truth is, the emes is that he needs to learn that Hashem is in control, and that Hashem's eternity allows Hashem to influence the vector of history, even against the machinations of somebody as purportedly powerful as Raamses. Good Shabbos.